Good day, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. My name is Michael, and this is my co-creator, Sanjeev, and we are here to welcome you to Inside the Cloud. This is a live dive into the AWS Cloud Practitioner Certification course. I'm here with KodeKloud. We're going to here to talk about a couple of surrounding things in this event that will help you pass the AWS Cloud Practitioner exam, along with a few other things, a few surprises, if you will. So stay tuned. We have an announcement at the end that will help you in your journey to achieve AWS Cloud certification. But meanwhile, I'm going to pass it on to Sanjeev, who's going to talk about how this is the first in a 5-part series.
All right, guys. So yeah, today is going to be the first of a 5-part series where we're going to meet every Thursday for about 45 minutes or so, and we're going to cover one of the 4 specific exam topics that make up the Cloud Practitioner exam. And on top of that, we're also going to spend some time doing some mock exam practice questions just to help you better understand AWS and prepare you for the CPA exam. Now, all the topics we cover are going to be aligned with the Cloud Practitioner exam guide, which we'll be going over in a little bit. But there's 4 key domains inside of AWS. So every Thursday for the next month or so, we're going to cover one of those 4 domains. Now today, this is just going to be a basic introduction to the series, but next week we'll start diving into these specific domains. Now this series will be run by either me or my coworker, co-creator of the course, Michael. So definitely come and make sure to join us on those specific dates. It's either going to be Michael or me running them, or maybe both, depending on the specific stream. But the dates listed, you can see the first date is today, July 27th. Once again, we're just going to be doing a basic introduction today. But every Thursday after that, which is going to include August 3rd, 10th, 17th, and 24th, we're also going to be doing streams as well. And you can see the respective topics that we're going to be covering for those specific streams. So make sure to come join us every Thursday, same channel, same time for those streams. And so now I'll pass it back to Michael. He's going to talk a little bit more about the Cloud Practitioner exam certification, as well as go over, we'll talk about both of our backgrounds that you can get to know us a little bit more and get to know the instructors a little bit more for the course.
Fabulous. All right, so we just invited you to an event. You just joined a live stream, but then what exactly are we talking about? What is the value even of AWS certification? Why is this even important? Let's talk a little bit about the course that Sanjeev and I co-created to help you increase your probability to as close to 100% as possible to pass the Cloud Practitioner exam. And then who are we? Like, why are you even talking to us? Why do we even matter? Why did we create a course? Who are we to even do this stuff? Let's just maybe a brief introduction about who we are. So let's first talk about this most important thing, which is that, the Cloud Practitioner course is the beginning of AWS certifications. And it's the place where most people start, unless you just have years and years and years and years of experience. Now, ignore that developer icon for a moment. That's a little mistake on my part. But we're talking about that little black hexagon there that just says Cloud Practitioner, because that's the first of the certifications you get with AWS. And then typically, once you achieve this certification, you then move on to things like the associate level certifications, which are now role-based, and you start to move more into, solutions architecture, developer, DevOps, system administration, that kind of thing. And then we move on to professional, which is the highest tier of role-based certifications. And then there's these specialty certifications, which is like kind of lateral to the highest tier, but these are deep dives into things like security, machine learning, SAP, databases, that kind of thing. So then where does Cloud Practitioner fit? First of all, AWS is still the market leader despite, diminishments in growth, which I find hilarious when they're like complaining about, well, we only grew 20% out of an $80 billion business last year. They're still right up there as the market leader, along with Azure, Google, Oracle, and the rest, right? But so this is a foundational certification that gets you started on the journey to achieve those role-based certifications. And you might say, well, Michael, why do I need that? Because I know AWS doesn't restrict me. You could literally jump to a professional certification or to a specialty certification. Here's the problem, and this is why we created this course. These certifications that are up at the higher level, well, they all assume that you actually have Cloud Practitioner knowledge. And if you decide later on to go for a professional certification, they're going to assume that you have the associate level knowledge beneath it. And even when you take a specialty exam, which isn't necessarily tied to the foundational, to the associate or the professional level exams, when you take a specialty level exam, they assume and will test you on whether or not you know basic architecture of AWS, or do you even know the services. So the Cloud Practitioner Certification is incredibly relevant because particularly if you are new to cloud, this is going to start your journey. This is going to build your confidence, and it's going to train you to run these AWS marathons, which we like sometimes call the certifications, so that you are ready to take them and pass them with confidence. So that's why this certification is so relevant. It's because it gets you started on the journey. Now, here's the course itself, which at this point, we probably will switch to the live website so you can see it. This is the homepage, if you will, for the course that we created. And as you can see there in the upper right-hand side, it's 7 sections, of which the first and the last are just kind of the introduction. But don't let me diminish the introductions. At the introduction and at the very end of this course, there is a mock exam that allows you to test and see whether or not you already know the material. You might come in and go right to the introduction, take the mock exam, which is a practice exam, 65 questions, 90 minutes, just like the actual AWS exam. And it's going to ask you questions about, do you understand the benefits of cloud? Do you know what SNS and SQS stand for? Are you aware of how security and the shared responsibility model function inside of AWS? So you can actually take that mock exam and get a feel for where you're at the beginning of the course. Take the meat of the course itself, which, by the way, follows the 4 domains that are actually inside the exam guide. So first, you're going to talk about cloud concepts, then you're going to talk about security, then you're going to talk about services, and then you're going to talk about billing. And then at the very end, after you've studied this material, we'll give you another mock exam. It'll be the same one you took before, and you can see whether or not you're actually ready. Did you learn the material? Do you understand what the services are for? Do you understand basic security in AWS? And so it's 10.5 hours of videos, demos, quizzes, and engagement to help you increase your probability as close to 100 as we can get you that you can actually pass the exam. Now, that being said, why don't we move on to meeting the instructors? So Sanjeev, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your relationship with AWS.
Yeah, so just a little bit of background about myself. So I've worked primarily in IT for about a decade, doing specifically things on the networking side. So think routers and switches, as well as integrations of those things within the cloud. And about a couple of years ago, I started making online courses covering a range of topics, from DevOps to programming to cloud. And I've been an instructor here at KodeKloud for about a year now. I've made several different courses like Prometheus. I've got a couple of other cloud-related courses as well. So definitely go take a look at those if you guys can, or if you're interested in. But that's the background of it. But that's my background in general.
Awesome. Okay. I'll talk a little bit. So I just recently actually left AWS in the training and certification team as of May of this year. And I have been working almost exclusively with AWS since 2011. Hi, I'm Michael Forrester. So I actually wrote some of the exam questions that some of you are going to take on the actual AWS exam, because that's what I did for AWS, is I did that. My background is predominantly somewhat similar actually to Sanjeev's, and then I started with networking and kind of moved on into all of these DevOps tools, everything from Terraform and Chef and Puppet and infrastructure as code and configuration management, and of course, but I've been working pretty strongly with AWS since the first time someone said, "Hey, can you come manage our virtual machines on cloud?" And I was like, "Hey, this is just like VMware." I was wrong, by the way. It wasn't just like VMware. It was AWS. It was a whole different beast. So that's my background. I'm a 25-year veteran in the industry, and so Sanjeev and I were excited to work together to kind of craft and create this course with our decades of experience in the industry. Now, that being said, our backgrounds. Sorry, I got a little ahead of myself. Let's talk about that we actually have a special announcement for you, because we want to enable you with as many tools and opportunities as possible to make sure that you can, again, increase that probability that you approach 100% in passing the exam. So I'll pass this on to Sanjeev.
Yep. So as Michael said, we want to help support the community as much as possible. And so to help you guys pass the Cloud Practitioner exam, what we're going to do is we're actually going to make this entire 10.5-hour course completely free and accessible to all of the attendees of the live stream. So the great part is you don't need to input your credit card or anything like that. The course is completely free. Starting right now, you guys can actually go to the website, join the course, and start watching videos as we speak. And it's going to remain free all the way until midnight Sunday. So this will give you full access to not only the course material, but also the community Slack. So if you have questions or if you want to discuss things with other people within the community, you can do that as well. And so I think hopefully this will give you guys an opportunity to try out the course and see if it's a good fit for your way of learning. And just another note, we've got the QR code up there as well. So you guys can just scan that with your phone and it's going to take you to the web page for the specific course. And just one other note, if you guys have any questions, we ask that you hold off on that till the end. We've got some time reserved for Q&A. If you ask them now, we might miss them. So just hold off until the Q&A section. So if you have any questions related to like AWS, or if you have questions regarding the free weekend access, or if you just have questions regarding KodeKloud and the platform in general, you can ask those during the Q&A sections.
Excellent. Okay. Well, you might be asking yourselves, okay, great. You've framed it up for us. You might be saying, oh, okay, so this is part of a 5-part series and this is the first episode. And you just mentioned that we're going to talk about topics in the next series. And you've got this amazing course and you're giving us this free weekend. We're so excited. And, it's going to be open until Sunday and we get access to the instructors. But what are we actually going to talk about? That might be the question that you might be wondering. It's like, well, what are we going to do in the next episode? What things are you going to do, Michael and Sanjeev, to help us pass the exam? Well, let's talk about it. So first of all, just know that from this point forward, after today's episode, every Thursday at the same time, same channel, we're going to talk about a topic, a domain topic relevant for the actual exam, of which there's only 4 for, Cloud Practitioner. We're actually also going to run through some practice exam questions, and we're going to teach you how to think like AWS and how AWS wants you to dissect these questions to increase your probability of passing the exam. And so, we would ask you to get ready and just come with us on this journey for the next 4 Thursdays after this one, and let us help you pass the exam. Now, here's the sample. So next week when we talk, we're going to talk about things like what is cloud computing, just on a generic standpoint. We're also going to talk about specifically what is AWS, because it is an AWS exam. So let's talk about things like application integration and compute and storage, like what services make up those sections, right? And so we'll talk about the service categories and deep dive into them to a certain degree, right? And then we're going to talk about things like the 3 ways that you can interact with AWS. There's the console, which most everybody's familiar with because it's this great website that everybody uses to manage. Then as you start getting speedier and more into scale, you're going to use the command line, because that's really how you scale up in AWS, is either you're using the CLI or you're using some other tool that's probably linking with what's called the SDK, the software development kit, and it's making API calls to AWS like Terraform or the CDK or even Pulumi, right? And so these are the kind of things we're going to talk about. We'll also talk about different design principles for cloud, like designing for failure. How do you resolve single points of failure? Like, is this a design principle that we go after, right? How do you increase resiliency? What does that look like? Again, just at a high level, because remember, this is a foundational level exam. So this is really purpose built for beginners to get started with AWS. If you look at this now and you're like, man, that seems really overwhelming. I don't even know what you're talking about, Michael, when you say resiliency. Come take the course. It was designed for the person who knows just a little bit about technology, who understands what a laptop is and its components. So in addition to design principles, we'll talk about things like pricing and billing. Again, high level overview. Don't worry about having to memorize the cost of a virtual machine in this location at this size. AWS does not ask you those questions. Instead, do you know, for example, that Amazon, the more you use, the lower the price is per unit, right? So here in 2006, it was 15 cents of a US dollar, 15% of a US dollar per gigabyte, basically, to get access to S3 storage. And now it's less than 3% of a dollar to get access to a gigabyte of storage, right? And so we talk about things like that, not because you need to rattle off the numbers, even pretend that I didn't say that, just so that you can know that there's these economies of scale that happen with AWS. In addition, we talk about different benefits of cloud, has usually commonly agreed upon things like, hey, let's stop focusing on data centers and let's focus on things that are core to our business, right? And then of course we get into the meat. Once we get past the content, we're going to talk about things like, hey, do you know how to dissect this question? Because the questions for Cloud Practitioner, by the way, are usually only about cloud benefits, basic high-level security, and then do you know the services? And not all the services. Do you know, for example, that EC2 stands for Elastic Compute Cloud, and that just translates into virtual machines? Or that Lambda is AWS's serverless service. And so when you want to run code and you don't want to manage servers, Lambda is typically what you use. And then, questions like this, like, do you know if you have to manage networking inside of AWS, what do you do to take like a particular network pie, like a piece of that pie called a subnet? How do you make it so that you can get to the internet and the internet can get to you safely, of course, because that's always the thing. And so this is the content that's going to be covered next week. And so we're going to spend about 20 minutes talking about cloud concepts just to give you a primer for what's in the actual course itself. We're going to spend about 20 minutes going over questions like this so that we can teach you how to think about these questions, break them down, analyze them, and teaches you what you don't know about the questions so you can correct it. So that's the whole content thing. So now we're going to open the floor up for a second, and we're going to talk about whatever questions you have. So the floor is completely open. Is there anything that we didn't explain? Anything you want to know? Any questions that you want to ask? The floor is completely yours. So we're now looking at the chat just to see if there's anything you want to ask us. Let's see. Oh, Daniel, you got your exam on Saturday. Congratulations. Yeah. The great thing about taking the exam is that, of course, you can go into a testing center, which I recommend, but of course, you can also take it online, which, can come with its own interesting challenges, but it's very convenient when you don't have access to a testing center. So good luck with that, Daniel. I hope that you pass with flying colors and that you come back to our Slack channel and they're like, I passed the CCP exam. It'd be awesome. Good. Let's see anybody else. Now, a couple of questions, by the way, that we commonly get just to talk about this. And if anybody asks a question, I'll stop talking for a second. It's just, again, remember that it is 90 minutes. It's going to be a 90-minute test. So if you haven't taken a mock exam in our course, you probably want to do that because it's 65 questions. Of those 65 questions, by the way, just know that Amazon is usually testing a few questions. But for the most part, it's going to ask you a bunch of services questions. It's going to ask you things like, do you know what EC2 is? And there's a common question here is like, what are the services that we will cover? Well, Mustafa, there's actually a great exam guide for AWS. And what we've done is we've parsed that exam guide and said, AWS says these are the things that are definitely going to be on the exam. And these are things that are definitely not going to be on the exam. Like typically that's what's in the exam guide. And so when we have that information, we take it and we create a list. Now, to answer your question specifically, it's typically things like what are the most common services for compute? For example, virtual machines, like Elastic Compute Cloud. What's the most common services that are used in storage, like Elastic Block Storage and S3? Because remember, you're not going to need to be able to even use, configure, or apply these services for Cloud Practitioner. You just need to be able to say, this is what this service does, and this is a very superficial use case for what I can use it for. For example, someone comes to you and says, I want to host an application on a Windows operating system, and I need access to the operating system. What do you use for that? Well, typically on an enterprise level, you're going to use Elastic Compute Cloud. You just need to know that's what EC2 does. If someone says, you know what, I need to be able to push a lot of files, small files en masse, and I need a URL for each of those files as I push them out there, you might use S3 for that because every file you put on S3 can be enabled to have its own individual URL that you can then share and give to your users. So Mustafa, the services that are going to be covered are relatively broad, but it ranges to about 30, maybe 40 services that are covered. So we're going to cover all the core ones. So compute, storage, networking, databases, some of the application integration services, some of the security services, management and governance. And so we'll cover those just at a high level. Let's see. This training will be free for the KodeKloud annual subscription. Well, right now it's free for everybody. So yes, you'll have access to here as you see fit. So Let's see, is the content of the course available for free after the course is over? So, I would say that you're going to get access for the full weekend. If you want access after Sunday, we probably want to look at one of our subscription plans to get access. Jenny, you asked a question. You said, are we going to record the sessions so we can see them if we miss the session live? I think in general, we host live sessions, to kind of create activity and engagement. So I don't have an answer for that yet. So I'll have that question for you the next time we talk. All right, Sanjeev, why don't you take a few here since I've been talking for a minute?
Yeah, let's see. How much would you say one would need to be prepared enough for the CCP exam? I would say, I think that's going to vary from person to person, but I think if you got a month to study, I think you can knock it out pretty easily. You don't need to know too much in depth as long as you can understand the role and the purposes of the different services. I think you're good to go for the exam. So you got a month. I think you should be pretty straight. Let's see. Do you have a tip to remember and understand the pillars of well-architected frameworks? All info is overwhelming. I don't know. Michael, you got any tips?
Yeah.
Strategies, flashcards?
I'm not going to commit to anything, but we could be possibly working on a course. Don't take this as gospel. There could be a solutions architect course somewhere in our future. I'm just saying maybe, possibly, right? So here's my tip for you. One, you don't need to know the well-architected framework in order to take the Cloud Practitioner exam. But Emmanuel, it's your right question. It's like, to understand the pillars of the well-architected framework, you will absolutely need to know them for pretty much any exam after this one, right? Because you've got security and reliability and performance efficiency and cost optimization, and then you've got sustainability and then operational excellence, right? And I just rattle them off as if I haven't been doing this for 10 years, which I have. So the point being is that the best way to learn them is actually to understand what they are. And there's great papers on the different frameworks, but if you want to memorize them, I would say that you probably want to go and just take a look at those particular papers, but also know that I frequently like to frame things up in a story. Like, what if, someone was to go to the land of reliability or explore, pieces of like the citadel of security? So sometimes making up a story about the pillars can be extremely helpful for memorizing them. So I would recommend that you do that. Just make up a quick story about the pillars and then take a look at the white papers that are out there for the well-architected framework, and you'll probably memorize it pretty quickly, actually. Back to you, Sanjeev.
Yep. And Akash asked, is the exam multiple choice question, or do we have to perform some tasks on CLI? So the exam is 100% just multiple choice questions. So there's no interactive labs or anything like that. And our mock exam is set up to kind of match and mirror exactly what the real exam is going to look like.
And Abu, we saw your comment. You passed the Terraform Associate Certification. Congratulations. Good job on that one. Oh, we love that. Yeah. Let's see. I think I saw another one out here. Ahmed, if you don't mind. Go ahead. Let's see. Ahmed, you got a 72% from the opening test in the course. You have an OpenStack background. Cool. Love OpenStack. But no AWS knowledge. Should I skip the CP exam and go for the solutions architect role? My statement to you would be no. So I would actually take the Cloud Practitioner exam if you're getting a 72%. If you came back to me and said, hey, I'm getting a 90 or 95 percentile, I would say, yeah, you know what, go ahead and skip it. But I would say if you're getting a 72%, I would probably go ahead and take the course, because it's going to flesh out that knowledge and make sure that you're certain about the content. And then when you do actually get to Solutions Architect Associate and you start your study there, it's going to give you this context so that you can actually take the Solutions Architect knowledge and put it in that framework. And so I would say let's start small with the Cloud Practitioner piece at that level, and then bring in the Solutions Architect. And so let's say, for example, that you went straight to Solutions Architect. It took you 4 months, 3 months, right, to actually get the knowledge and pass Solutions Architect. If you take Cloud Practitioner now, it'll actually shorten that time frame in my typical experience with students. So I would do the Cloud Practitioner first, then go after the essay course.
And Rahul is asking, what are the prerequisites? Do you need any computer networking security background? So for this course, I mean, there really isn't any prerequisites. We're not really diving too deep into any complex, technologies or anything like that. So you don't have to have any background. No networking background, no security background. It may help to have that. Obviously, if you understand networking, then you'll understand, things like VPCs a little bit more and understand what a subnet is. But for this course, the way we designed it is that it's designed so that you guys can come in with a blank slate, not having any background in AWS or any of those other technologies, and you guys should be able to kind of hit the ground running.
Oh, hold on. I gotta grab this one. This is a great question. Abivan, let's see. How can can I write the AWS Cloud Practitioner exam? Should you create an account? And add credit card details. So I will tell you that any level of practitioner, whether you're cloud practitioner or the associates level or the pro and specialty, I would say having your own account and managing it is actually invaluable experience. Do you need to do that for cloud practitioner? No. Let me be super clear. You do not need to do that for cloud practitioner. But if you decide to go for any certification beyond this one, I would highly recommend that you get a free account and you manage it yourself and just go low or no budget. And by the way, here's the general rule of thumb if you want to avoid paying extra charges in AWS. If you start something and you turn it on, just turn it off the minute you're done with it. Don't leave it running. And the first thing you should do if you create your own AWS account is turn on AWS budgets and set up a notification if you spend any amount beyond what you're comfortable with. In other words, you can go in and turn on a notification service that says, hey, if I spend more than $5, send me notifications. But you don't need it for cloud practitioner. You don't have to have your own account.
And another note, we have on our platform, we have AWS Playgrounds. So if you don't want to put your credit card on AWS and you don't want to wake up one morning with a $30,000 bill potentially, you can always use these playgrounds, the little sandboxes that we set up so you guys don't have to worry about putting in credit card information or anything like that. And you'll get access to a lot of the core and common services so you can play around and get familiar with the AWS console.
You will get completely spoiled, by the way, because our playgrounds are right in your browser, easy to set up, great for using, right? And so you're going to get completely spoiled because if you go set up your own account and then you use our AWS playgrounds on KodeKloud's website, you're going to be like, I don't know that I want to run my own account after using the playgrounds. So, which is totally valid, right? It's the reason we offer them because they're just so much easier to use. Let's see. Abiyant. Let's see. Completed the course and get the mock exam. Got a 92% before starting the course. Got a 72%. Can you suggest how I can get an exam voucher at a discounted price or for free? I don't really have an answer for that particular question. Congratulations, by the way, on getting a 90%, 92% on the mock exam, and a 20% increase from where you were from 72 to 92. That's great. I don't really have any answers yet for notice the yet. I don't have any answers yet for your exam voucher. If I were to offer a slight hint, maybe come to the live stream and see what happens. So. Okay, what else do we miss here? Oh, what about the Raghav's question, Sanjeev?
Don't see it.
Hope you guys are planning AWS DevOps course. I think we have several DevOps courses, do we not? We've got fundamentals of DevOps. We've got DevOps prerequisites. We've got a lot of DevOps courses. So, Raghav, if you're having struggles, please catch us on the Slack community because we've got a lot of explicit DevOps courses, and our website is pretty much nothing but DevOps tooling, along with like specializations in Kubernetes and cloud. So I think, yeah, if you don't find what you're looking for, let us know because we will definitely help you. Okay. Let's see. Another thing was what certification should we consider doing for DevOps engineer? So Akash, I would say this is that, we've got Cloud Practitioner, which is what we're talking about today. Probably the next level up is probably the developer and operations courses. And then AWS does have a professional level course on DevOps engineering. I will forewarn you, because I have all the certifications, this is one of the hardest courses you can take, even harder than, at least for me, than machine learning, which I wasn't necessarily a specialist in, but was good at. So I would say that they do have a professional certification on DevOps like engineering. So yeah, I would say that if you're looking for that kind of thing, definitely run through our DevOps courses and our AWS courses and maybe consider taking a look at KodeKloud Engineer, which is really going to help you with your practical application of DevOps skills. So.
Yeah, and for the certifications, I think that's more just for DevOps. It's more specific to like what either you do on the job, or what you're interested in, or what kind of job you're looking for. So obviously, the field of DevOps has a lot of technologies that are kind of incorporated with it. So it really comes down to what you're interested in. If you want to go the Kubernetes route, then obviously you have the CKA, CKAD. If you want to do infrastructure as code, you want to learn about Terraform, then we have the Terraform Associate certification as well. So it really comes down to ultimately what you're interested in, and then just kind of diving into the certifications associated with that technology.
Yeah, good. Other question I saw here was, do we have any Elk stacks? So that's Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana, right? Or New Relic tools in the KodeKloud subscription. Let's see. I don't think there's any New Relic in there. I'm pretty sure that's the case. And I'm not sure about Elk. I don't think that we have the Elk stack in there. I think we have other logging tools in there, but I don't think we have the Elk stack explicitly. So yeah, not an AWS question. So, so I just want to recognize that it's 12:15. We're going to run this for 30 minutes. If you have other questions, please feel free to email us, catch us on Slack. Enjoy the course. I hope you have a fabulous time. Oh, go ahead.
Just one thing about the Elk stack, we do have a playground for that. So if you want to get an Elk stack up and running as quickly as possible, you can play around with the one of the observability playgrounds that we have for that.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for keeping me honest, Sanjeev. So overall, I just want to say thank you for joining. I know that you may have additional questions. Again, either catch us next week on the live stream or come hang out in our Slack community. We'd love to answer your questions or post on our forums. Thank you so much for being here. Don't forget to hit subscribe or like, and leave us comments and feedback about how you would like us to amend, or just like your questions here, add other courses and look at other features there. And again, we have the QR code down at the bottom. And don't forget to join us next week. We will be here every Thursday for the next 4 Thursdays after today. And we would love to walk you through Cloud Practitioner and help you as you pass the certification. Thanks, everyone.